to understand the problems in any detail, it's worth doing a little historical hop back in time to kind of understand the moment that is the big missed opportunity. And long-term RailNet viewers will know what I'm on about, because yes, we have to go back to see Beeching. Here he is. Now, contrary to popular belief, it is not the fact that Beeching closed a bunch of rural rail lines that is the main problem. We got the publishing of the reshaping report, the one that's over my shoulder, in 1963. And, there were lots of successful elements of it, particularly intercity passenger expresses and intermodal freight, seriously successful. And tackled, what the question of what the railways were actually for in a way that has still not been done since then. But it was absolutely not perfect. And its biggest failure was that Beeching did not see the role of suburban railways. Much of this was happening in the US, actually. I just recorded an episode in the US just recorded an episode of WTYP where we kind of considered this fact. Suburban railways were kind of considered an expensive carbuncle in the 60s. They were like, no, everyone's going to drive, forget suburban railways. They're an anachronism. And Beeching looked to essentially wind them down. He placed little value of weight on retaining any duplication of city networks, and in Birmingham, this proves to be an extremely costly error. So, let us jump to the start of the 60s. So here we go. Here is the centre of Birmingham. Actually, this map is from slightly later. This map is, I think, from like the late 60s, if not early 70s. But anyway, it's kind of around about the right time, 1960-ish. So what do we have here? What's going on here? We have 3 city centre stations. We've got New Street in the midst of modernisation, electrification to become kind of the city's main railway terminus. Snow Hill was sort of seeing its services being run down in readiness for closure. There's Snow Hill. Much of the former Great Western Railway network north of the city centre, including its eponymous tunnel, was planning for being wiped out. And Moore Street would consequently be reduced. Yeah, that's Moore Street. There it is, Moore Street. To basically a little stub for a very limited timetable. But that wasn't all. There was also, if we zoom out a little bit, there was also a Central Goods Station located close to New Street on the lines facing southwest towards Edgbaston. And a little further from the centre was somewhere that you might all be familiar with, the sprawling former terminus at Curzon Street, a massive, still in railway ownership and in diminishing use as a goods station. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 major termini in the centre of Birmingham. However, if we hop forwards a decade, and we'll see that only New Street was in regular railway use, with all the stations but Moore Street having been completely closed. Moore Street basically was on its way out as well. The few suburban services that remained used New Street, as did regional services and intercity services. The opportunities for growth at this point had essentially been eliminated. And this kind of leads us with a bit of a what if, because if we zoom out again, just so we can think about services. By the way, if anyone wants Beeching detail, jump back to Beeching. Jump back to the Beeching episodes, who we have done several. If you have any questions about Beeching, that's where to go. So, for example, BR rebuilt Curzon Street as the main intercity terminus, then we could have had better, that might have provided better connectivity north and south. Or perhaps had BR greatly expanded Moore Street to include additional platforms terminating trains from the West Coast and cross-country lines. Then New Street's very limited footprint could have been put to good use on primarily suburban services, for example, what did not exist then as the cross-city line, allowing much more headroom for growth. Alas, no such foresight existed. It wasn't all doom and gloom, though, because within a decade of the closures, enter passenger transport executives, because, it's the WMPTE. We saw increased local autonomy and significant passenger growth. They'd already resulted in the creation of the cross-city line from the scattered remnants of network that did remain. Soon after the Snow Hill Tunnel would be reopened. Here it is. Look at them. They're reopened. There's some nice brickwork that's been redone. There's some new track work. Timber sleepers with pan 9s or pan 11s or whatever. Okay, fine. There it is. The reopening Snow Hill Tunnel, marvellous. With the I called it midline as the with a horribly sort of warped double arrow, but never mind about that. Here it is, the midline as they called it. Here they are, reopening Snow Hill Tunnel. doing a variety of other bits and pieces. So we've got services expanding back through the west of the city into Smethwick in the 1990s. Actually, that was what kind of this midline branding kind of is their urban thing. We'll do another episode on midline, I'm sure. We've got that was in the 1990s, and then through into the 1990s, by the mid-1990s, we were making use of other sections of former railway by building a new tram system, which is, much to my chagrin, is euphemistically called a metro, but it is nothing of the sort. This started appearing from the mid-90s and growing, and here the glorious thing is. So that brings us kind of up to this point. All of these developments either made use of closed or kind of unused bits of railway, or had to squeeze alongside services on the retained railway network. So there was no new railway has been built since the 1960s, despite this enormous growth in public transport patronage seen across the city and its hinterland. The kind of problem today, in a nutshell, is that the Birmingham railway network is one of only two key nodes through which a significant volume of national railway traffic flows, including intercity, regional freight services. Only Manchester gets close to the same level of conflict on such a small cluster of lines. But at the same time, railway operators and city authorities are desperate to levy the railway to reverse road traffic growth, unlock development by expanding its urban and suburban rail capacity, and generally reduce things like low air quality and such and such. It would have been extremely difficult to make this work with the railway map of the early 1960s. If we'd left it as it was in the early 1960s, this would have been extremely difficult. It is impossible with today's diminished network.